What's going on, guys? My name is Jake. I am an age group triathlete, and this channel is dedicated to my journey in triathlon. And today we're going to be chatting about my last race, which was 70.3 Jones Beach, the end of September. It's been a little while since the race, but I figured better late than never. So today we're going to give you guys everything you need to know to get up to speed on Jones Beach 70.3 itself. And then we're also going to get a little bit of a race recap of my race personally, where I placed 15th overall and 5th in my age group, which is the 25 through 29. If you guys like the content, be sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button. Now let's get right into it. So first things first, if you guys just want to hear about kind of the venue and things, I'll put a little time stamps up here so that way you guys can watch whatever you would like to hear about. We're going to talk about kind of my journey to the race because I live down in Maryland and I drove up to New York for the race. And then we're also going to talk about kind of the venue itself. And you guys can take what you want from that and decide if this might be a race for you. The race itself was on September 28th. So the 28th is a Saturday, and my girlfriend and I drove up on the 26th, which was the Thursday morning. I didn't really feel like I needed a whole bunch of time to acclimate myself to the area because it was only a 4-hour drive, 3 or 4 hour drive, so nothing terrible. Basically went straight past Philadelphia, straight past Newark, and into the city. And I kind of went around the city to pick up some bagels from Utopia Bagels. If any of you guys have watched any of my previous videos, you know I'm really into pizza and also bagels, so I really liked being able to grab some of those. Then Thursday, we kind of explored a bit. We ended up getting some pizza and we went to the Ironman Village. I kind of got checked in and everything, got my bib and got all the stuff that I need. And then we headed back to the Airbnb. So we decided to stay in a camper Airbnb. It was a pretty cool stay, but it was about 20 to 25 minutes from the actual venue itself. Kept it pretty mellow on Thursday, just kind of hanging out. I didn't do any sessions on Thursday. So that takes us into Friday, and Friday was the day that we go ahead and get the bike checked in, and we're also really carb loading heavy on Friday, so that's always fun. I got everything all situated, and I ended up going with a front hydration setup on my bike this year. So I have a bottle between the arms and then another one kind of under that one to basically, the thought is to be more aerodynamic, but we're not really sure. And then I carried 2 bottles behind my saddle, which we'll go into kind of my fueling strategy and things a little bit more here later on. But yeah, the venue itself was great venue. One of the better ones I've been to. The whole transition area is paved, or I think it's actually concrete, but regardless, it's a good surface, so that way you don't have to worry about mud or any of that stuff. The swim is actually in a bay. I forget the actual name of the bay, but it was pretty salty. A good swim nonetheless. And also on Friday, you had an opportunity to get a little swim warm up in if you wanted to feel the water out and see what you would be in for come Saturday morning. I chose not to, just because I didn't really feel like I needed to. I got a good eye on everything and I didn't feel that it was too necessary. Yeah, everything was pretty accessible within the transition area. It was only one transition, so some races you go to, you have 2 transitions in completely different places. So you'll come out of the swim, have one transition where you get on your bike, and then your second transition's in a whole nother place. This wasn't, so they were both in the same place. That made it logistically a little bit easier. And I will say there was a ton of parking at the venue. You don't have to worry about any parking issues. If you guys are thinking about doing this race, I would really recommend joining the Facebook group, especially as you get closer to the race day. A lot of people start posting in there and you can really learn a lot about the scenery without actually being there. And that's what I did to kind of take things in and get my head on straight before we even arrived to New York. That pretty much wraps up my whole travel to the venue and the venue itself. I really have no complaints about the venue at all. If you stick around and listen to my race recap, then you can kind of learn a little bit more about the course. But hopefully you guys got a little something out of that. So now that you guys have a little idea of the race venue itself, we can jump into my race specifically. I woke up around, I think it was 4 o'clock on Saturday morning. There was talk about there being a rainstorm, and the previous year for this race, it was pretty wet and rainy, I heard. I was hoping for the best, and everybody said that it was gonna kind of rain through the night, and then it was gonna stop and kind of ease off around the time that we were gonna race. So I wake up, get a bagel in, head to the race venue, go in transition, kind of get everything straight, get my bottles on my bike, disc wheel pumped up, do all the good stuff to get ready. It's still kind of raining and like wet the whole time, all morning. So just kind of like brief showers, nothing crazy, but definitely some wind, some rain. Wasn't looking too good, but everybody's thought was still that once we got out for the swim, it was going to be done raining by the time we were done swimming, and then the bike would be a wet ride, but not raining during the ride, and so that was kind of the hope. The wind brought in a decent amount of waves for the swim, and even though it was in a bay, I would say there's still like 1, maybe 2 footers. It wasn't really white capping, but it was just really up and down. So that definitely impacted the swim. Another thing to note, the swim was wetsuit legal this year, and I'm thinking that it normally is wetsuit legal. So you won't have any issues there if you're a bit weaker swimmer and you kind of rely on your wetsuit, which that seems to be me. So get in for the swim. I'm out there, and for me, with my swim and my ability in the water, the way I choose to race is to conserve a bit of energy in the swim and kind of save that for my bike and my run, because my bike is definitely my strong suit and my run has been doing decent in the last year. So my swim seems to be kind of the weaker link there, so I don't want to waste a whole bunch of energy. It seems like the return isn't really worth the investment for me. So I get out there, kind of just settle into a zone 2 pace. I ended up kind of starting in the first group, and the main reason I chose to do that is because I do hopefully want to have one of the faster bike splits of the race. So I don't want to be stuck behind a whole bunch of people if I seed myself in the proper place for swimming. I did end up swimming right around 30 minutes. I'll put the time up here. I think I was 93rd out of the water. So definitely not a bad swim considering there was about 4,000 people. Very happy with that. Luckily, like I said, it was wetsuit legal. So get out of the swim. One thing to note, we're gonna go over the nutrition as we're going here, and before the swim, about 5 minutes before, took a PF 30 caffeine gel, kind of get things going. So in this race, I was kind of testing out a little bit more caffeine, and we'll go through my whole race fueling strategy here as we go. But get out onto the bike, and unfortunately the rain had never stopped. Have some videos that I'm going to be putting in here throughout the recap. So the rain never stopped, unfortunately. I got on the bike and it had been raining like all night the previous night, and luckily they closed down the parkway. So this race, the bike course, is on a parkway, and that is very nice because of the fact that generally the parkways are well maintained, and there's a couple of them, so they can shut down the one while still having access to the Jones Beach area. So you get out there, and the first like 10 miles or something, one thing to note is that it is concrete and there's a bit of expansion joints. So it's where they have about, I don't know, ½ inch cut in the road so the concrete can move, and if you don't go over those with a pretty aggressive angle, you can get your front tire or rear tire stuck in them and it will cause you to go down. So that was one thing that they really emphasized in the pre-race briefing, that if you're going across them or you're going to make a pass, make sure that you go at a pretty steady angle, because the expansion joints are right in between the lanes. So that was one thing to note. Initially got on the bike, and I kind of always disregard my heart rate for the first like 10 minutes and just go off a feel, because my heart rate seems to be pretty elevated coming out of transition, just all the adrenaline pumping. So first 10 minutes kind of just settled in right around like, 270, something like that, 270 watts. I quickly realized that the course was very, very wet, and not only to the point where the roads were wet, but also like the shoulder all the way on the right side where we were supposed to be riding, more or less, was probably a 2 or 3 inch puddle. So that just made that inaccessible. So I ended up riding kind of more towards the middle. I get on the bike and I'm passing a ton of people that got around me in the swim. I get around all of those people probably by about mile 10, 15, and I'm settled into a decent pace. My goal for this race was right around 280 watts. So that was what I was shooting for, and the main reason being because of the fact that earlier in the year for 70.3 Eagleman, I did 265 or 270 watts. So I wanted to see a bit of an improvement, and my training told me that I could see that improvement. So the bike course is a double out and back. So you go out, it's about, I guess, 13 miles or so, turn around, come back, and then do that one more time. It seemed like about the starting of the second lap, there was a little let up in the rain, so it wasn't quite as bad. The roads were still drenched, and the only thing that we kind of fought on the second lap was the traffic. So people that were just now getting onto the bike course for their first lap. So you ended up taking up almost the whole road, because you had people that you were trying to pass that also were trying to pass other people, and you don't want to put anybody in a dangerous situation. You're coming by a lot faster, so you just end up all the way on the left side of the road trying to just get by. So that was a little challenging, but we made it work, and I realized when I was at the turnaround for the first lap that I was in about 15th or 16th position, so that was cool to see. And I caught one guy, and we worked together for a bit. And when I say work together, more or less he was behind me, and then the second lap he passed me, and I was kind of trying to stay within the draft legal limit. And it came pretty apparent to me that he was negative splitting the bike like significantly. So even me riding behind him, I know he had to be doing right around 300 watts, because behind him I had to do like 285, 290, and I knew that that was just a little bit too much, so I ended up having to let him go. Still just focusing on nutrition, taking things in. My strategy for the nutrition for the bike was I had 3 bottles on my bike. I had 2 behind the saddle and 1 between my arms that I was using, and they each had about 100 grams of carbs in them and about, I guess, closer to 2,000 milligrams of sodium, right around like 1,800. I was able to get in all of that and also another PF30 caffeine gel. So I got down 330 grams of carbs and about almost 3 liters of fluid with close to 5,500 milligrams of sodium. I tend to find that I'm a pretty salty sweater, and I run into cramps for the run if I'm deficient, like, at all. So I definitely wanted to make sure I was on top of that. It became pretty clear that I was. By the time I got into transition, my legs were still feeling really good, and I had no worries about cramps, but I could definitely feel the effort in my legs, which is to be expected with a 70.3 on the bike for a while. My final bike split, I think, was right around 2:15, and considering the conditions, it being really, really windy and raining for like probably 3/4 of the ride, I was really happy with this because I still ended up splitting a little bit faster than Eagleman, even though the conditions were bad and there was a little bit more hills on this bike course. So definitely not a hilly bike course by any means, but there was a couple rollers that probably did slow it down just a hair. I think on the right day that could have been a lot faster, but that's one thing that hopefully we'll find out in 2025. Get into transition 2. Still raining a decent amount. Wind is just crazy. I chose to wear the Alpha Fly 3s for this race. They tend to work with my body pretty decent, so I went with those. Get out onto the run course, start my Garmin, and really first couple of miles I'm just running more or less off effort. The run course is kind of a out and back twice, again, just like the bike course. So I realized that one way was going to be a straight tailwind and one way was going to be a straight headwind. And as anybody knows that does triathlon and trains for triathlon or running, you know that you never get back what you lose in a headwind, even if you have a good tailwind. I run out and I'm running a little bit faster than what I know is probably sustainable, right around like 6:35, 6:40 or something like that. And I had the tailwind, so I was able to do that. Felt pretty good for like the first 3-4 miles. Right about at 3.5, you would turn around to head back or something right around those lines. When I turn around, I just immediately realized that it was just going to be survive the headwinds and try to take advantage of the tailwinds, because my pace quickly went from 6:35, 6:40 straight up to like 7:05, right at the same intensity, maybe even more intensity to hold 7:05. So that was just so unbelievable to me. As far as my nutrition strategy for the run, I didn't actually carry any fluid on me, but I did carry 4 precision gels, them all being the 30 gram of carb, but one of them being the 100 calf that I was planning on taking about halfway through the run, in which I was able to execute and keep putting those down. Also had some salt pills in a little pill bottle where I would take a couple, you know, at every other aid station or so, and I was always taking water and sometimes the Mortal or even Coke at some of the aid stations. And I'm definitely not afraid to walk the aid stations to get what I need, because I know how important that is, especially in this long of a race. My real big goal going into the race was a sub 130 half marathon off the bike. I really thought that I had that in the bag after the first lap. I was feeling good, and then I started taking advantage of the tailwind again, and I knew that on the way back it was just going to be a sufferfest. And what ended up happening was, as you would get onto your second lap, there would be more and more runners on the course coming in from their bike rides, going out for their first lap. So anytime you could run behind somebody to just kind of block you from the wind, just briefly, it seemed like it would help. And I found a couple guys that were running a good pace that I felt good with. So probably for about a half a mile on the way back to the finish line, I was able to really sit behind someone and get a little bit of a benefit, but still was just very, very challenging run on the way back, in which it's supposed to be. So nothing really to complain about there, but I end up coming in right under 4 hours and 21 minutes. So a big goal of mine was to go under 4 hours and 20, but it just wasn't in the cards for the day. I'm gonna give some of that to the conditions, but everybody had to deal with the same thing. So no real excuses. Still just very happy with the performance. It's a very big jump in time and power and pace since Eagleman. So really have no complaints there. Definitely would recommend 70.3 Jones Beach to anyone that's looking for a race around that time. Hopefully you guys will get better luck than I had with the weather. And it seems like for some reason it's like the kryptonite of the race that it always rains for it, because it's happened 2 years in a row and the race has only been going on for 2 years. So both years have been wet and rainy conditions. There's always the argument of which year was worse, but I can't really speak for the first year, only this year. But it's definitely a great venue. The race director and everybody really had their head on straight and really put together a well-rounded race. So really appreciate all the volunteers, everybody that came out and was given a hand on the course anywhere. That all means a lot to all the athletes. Definitely great race energy. One to consider if you're thinking about a race around that time of year. I guess that's where we're gonna wrap it up. Very happy with the race. Unfortunately, this video has been a bit of a long time coming, but better late than never, like I said earlier. And if you guys enjoy the content, I'm hopefully gonna be back into it with some regular training vlogs. It seems like those always did well and I really enjoyed them. So yeah, if you like the content, be sure to drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and we will be back soon. Thanks.